As of recent, I've begun a mini-series in which I'd rank every major roller coaster manufacturer there is. Now that that's finished, I thought I'd branch off of it with videos about the worst coasters from each manufacturer. Just a quick note though, this was not my original idea. Airtime Thrills did this first, and I'd highly recommend checking out his video. A link to his channel will be down in the description. This video will highlight the worst coasters from half of the manufacturers in the series, aka numbers 12 to 1. Now I obviously haven't ridden every roller coaster from every manufacturer out there, so I'll just be taking my best guess as to what looks like the worst from each company. Also, in the past couple of videos where I discussed the best coasters from each manufacturer, I went over what my personal favorite was and what I thought the best overall was. For this video, I will not be picking personal least favorites because I don't dislike many coasters at all. Plus, it's a terrible way of looking at things, and I always try to look at the good in each coaster I ride. Before we dive in, I'd like to ask if you guys could subscribe to the channel. The support lately has been amazing, so let's keep that going. With that all being said, here are the worst roller coasters from every major manufacturer. Starting things off, we've got Aerodynamics, which is kind of a tough call to me. I know many enthusiasts will immediately answer with Corkscrew at Cedar Point, which is definitely a rough coaster, but it's also a ride I found to provide some good airtime. Because of that, that's not my top choice. I'm actually going to assume that either of the two mini Mine Train coasters are the worst. These rides include Mini Mine Train at Six Flags Over Texas and Marché du Mille-Pétés at La Ronde. Sorry if I butchered that pronunciation, I don't speak French. Anyways, these are small rides that aren't a bad worst operating coaster for the company. To be honest, this might even be an unfair choice since they were built to accommodate a different audience. If not these, I think the regular Aero Corkscrew coasters like the ones at Valley Fair and Michigan's Adventure or Anaconda at King's Dominion could come out on top as the very worst operating Aero coaster. Premier Rides primarily builds launch coasters, but they have one roller coaster in their portfolio without one, and it's the ride I'm declaring their worst. The coaster is called Runaway Mountain, and it's located at Six Flags Over Texas. Just to clarify, this ride actually does look like fun. The only problem is that it can't counter with Premier's other roller coasters. I could see the backlot stunt coasters that utilize broken effects to take its place, but I'm gonna go with my gut and say that I'm gonna put this coaster at the very bottom. Again, it's hard to trash on. It's a cool looking family coaster that takes place entirely indoors, so take this pick as you will. Custom Coasters International's worst roller coaster is something I really don't think about often, but now that I am, the answer couldn't be any more obvious. Pegasus at Mount Olympus looks like a piece of garbage. It is just a family coaster, but the transitions are laughably flawed, and I'm genuinely surprised this thing is still around. To be fair, not all of the ride looks bad per se, but the layout literally makes no sense. Just look at this turnaround and tell me CCI weren't on crack. Like, what is that? And also, I must reiterate how horrible these transitionings are, particularly the turn into the brake run that is notorious for this very reason. I have nothing else to say about Pegasus other than putting it at the bottom was a no-brainer for me. Next up is Vekoma, and oh boy, I think we all know where this is headed. Literally this entire coaster community hates the Vekoma SLC, so that's obviously going to be my pick. I personally did not despise the only one I've ridden, being Flight Deck at Canada's Wonderland, but without the proper maintenance, I could see how these rides could be pretty nasty. Also, I should clarify that this does not include the unique SLC layouts like Odyssey at Fantasy Island and Kumali at Flamingoland in the UK. Rather, I'm talking about the traditional layout like the Mind Erasers at Six Flags America and Darien Lake. A few SLCs I'd like to specifically call out are Ednor at La Ronde, F2 Fright Flight at Nasu Highland in Japan, Kong at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom, and T3 at Kentucky Kingdom. These four coasters all have horrible reputations, so if you go to ride them, you have been warned. Gerslauer is not a company that is exactly known for building bad roller coasters. Matter of fact, they seem to have an awesome lineup. Whether the ride is big or small, it'll pack a punch. However, one of the contenders for worst Gerslauer is one of the bigger ones, being Huracan at Belantis in Germany. I actually don't know why this ride is so controversial from those who do ride it, because the layout looks really solid, but those who dislike it really dislike it. To be honest, I'm struggling to find any other Gerslauer coaster that could appropriately take Huracan's place, but I'm not entirely sure you should depend on that really being the worst Gerslauer. Again, the layout looks good, and I do know some people that like it, so really, I have no idea what to think. If you have any other ideas for what the worst operational Gerslauer could be, please let me know down in the comment section of this video. While Mack Rides is most well known for their LSM launch coasters, they are also one of the premier manufacturers for Wild Mouse coasters. I've been on quite a few of their Wild Mice, and I have to say, Coast Rider at Knott's Berry Farm is such a stupid ride. I'm not necessarily sure if it's the very worst coaster by Mack Rides, but I'm sticking with it for now because it's such a terrible coaster. For one, Knott's Berry Farm doesn't even need this in their lineup. I have no idea why it's there. 2, it trims hard so you barely get any laterals on those turns. And 3, this is easily the biggest reason why it sucks so bad, and that is the restraints that are awful. Because of an incident of a kid who tried to exit the ride at an inconvenient time, the park decided to add in these shin guard restraints that are both very restricting and also very uncomfortable for taller riders. Heck, I had a problem fitting into these trains years ago when I was several feet shorter than I am now, so these are just horrible restraints no matter what your height is. Fortunately, much of Mack rides' other Wild Might are decent rides that are easily superior to this one, so don't try to avoid the entire model, but rather just this specific one. S&S Worldwide hasn't really built many bad roller coasters, but there still are a couple that come to mind. First one that I wanted to mention is the standing but not operating Hellcat at Clementon Park in New Jersey. The problem here is that the park did a horrible job at maintaining the thing. It was such a large wooden coaster, and the layout actually looked decent, but unfortunately Clementon Park didn't have the funds to support such a large ride. Today, the park sits dormant with no plans to ever operate again. Either way, it'd be against the rules to put an SBNO coaster as the worst operational roller coaster since it's literally not operating, but still, I did want to give it a mention. With that out of the way, there is a model from S&S that looks very, very terrible. It was almost like they were trying to make a bad ride type here, and of course, I'm talking about the Screaming Squirrel model, of which you can find at Gardaland in Italy and Mysterious Island in China, but there also used to be one at Wonder Island in St. Petersburg, Russia, but unfortunately that ride went defunct recently in 2016. So, why are these rides so bad? Well, I can't explain it in words, just look at the layout on screen. This is actually a real recording of the coaster that you're seeing right now. Like, I literally want to know who thought this would be a good idea. Look at this thing. Anyways, we've been rambling on for a while now, so let's carry on with GCI. Great Coasters International is one of the premier wood coaster manufacturers and have built some really awesome rides. Unfortunately, they also have a select few not so awesome rides, and the one I'm picking as worst coaster that they have in operation is Roar at Six Flags America. While I personally haven't ridden it yet, the layout looks very bland outside of the last quarter of it maybe, and it just appears to run stupid rough. There also used to be a similar coaster to this, also named Roar, at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom, but that ride got the RMC treatment because Six Flags actually cares enough about that park. For one reason or another, Six Flags has yet to do this to the Roar that I actually think could have used it more. I hate to say it, but this ride looks like hot garbage and is literally waiting patiently for an RMC iBox conversion. While GCI is great, the Gravity Group is even greater in my opinion. This manufacturer is one of the most innovative out there and their rides are absolutely amazing, but still, not even they can escape a worst coaster pick. What they can do, however, is fill in that gap with a coaster that still looks pretty solid. The ride that I'm referring to is Coaster Saurus at Legoland, Florida, which is a tiny Gravity Group coaster that utilizes Millennium Flyer trains from GCI. This isn't like their other small woodies which really pack a punch, since this coaster is a good margin older, but again, it still looks like a fun ride and it's an excellent worst coaster for this company. If that doesn't speak to the quality of the Gravity Group, then I don't know what does. Bolliger and Mabillard and bad are rarely ever found in the same sentence, but there is one roller coaster from the manufacturer that I don't think anyone really likes. And no, I'm not talking about Vortex at Carowinds, I actually like stand-up coasters. I'm talking about Firebird at Six Flags America. This used to be a stand-up coaster that went by the name of Apocalypse and was converted with floorless trains in 2019. Those trains and any shakiness is an awful combination, that I can promise. Firebird looks like absolute trash, but I can't bash B&M at all on this since this was their first roller coaster they ever built. It opened at Six Flags Great America, so it's lived through a relocation and a conversion. So again, it's honestly understandable to why it's such a bad ride. Coming up next is Rocky Mountain Construction, and honestly, is it possible that there isn't a worst RMC? I know the general consensus is that it's Joker at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom, but especially as of recent, people have started to differentiate that opinion with rides like Goliath, New Texas Giant, maybe Twisted Cyclone, and etc. Because of that, I'm not actually going to declare a worst RMC. You also have to remember that even the worst RMCs are within the top 100 roller coasters in the world. So again, is there really a worst RMC? The last manufacturer on our list is Intamin, and many probably have their mindset on their choice. Interestingly enough though, those coasters, like Green Lantern First Flight at Six Flags Magic Mountain and Flashback, also at Six Flags Magic Mountain, which were legitimate contenders, are now removed from their park. So really, there aren't many bad Intamin coasters that remain in operation, so my approach to worst operational Intamin coaster is going to be taken in a slightly different way. Rather, the coasters I'm going to be mentioning are more boring than anything else. These coasters are RC Racer at Walt Disney Studios in Paris, RC at Hong Kong Disneyland, and Rex's Racer at Shanghai Disneyland. These rides literally make no sense. They go back and forth exactly like an Intamin half-pipe coaster, but instead you've got forwards-facing seats rather than spinning seats. These coasters don't look intense at all, nor are they really meant to, but I feel like it'd be really easy for these rides to put you to sleep. They look that lame. Nonetheless, I doubt they're bad rides since they're not uncomfortable or rough or anything, but I'm not sure what Intamin coasters could be worse at the top of my head. Like gerslauer, definitely feel free to leave a comment and help me out here, because I have no clue to what the true worst Intamin coaster in operation could really be. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video in which I've covered the worst roller coaster from each major coaster manufacturer. If you enjoyed, I'd really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks again, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye guys.